Now, one thing we worried about when we design a survey or a questionnaire and come up with questions is the data quality and possible influences that our design of the survey or the questionnaire might have on the quality of the data that we're collecting. And interestingly, the survey business has been around for a while, so there's tons and tons of literature on this topic. So it's probably, when it comes to methods, the methods that we talk about, the most well-covered area of methodological approach in terms of research about survey methodology. If you're interested, you browse through Public Opinion Quarterly, International Journal of Public Opinion Research. They will give you a lot of, and go back to the old issues, you know, to the 70s, 60s for basics even. But they will give you a lot of literature on these issues. So we seem to know a lot about this. We seem to be fairly certain about a few things here. There's a bit more shaky evidence about other things. Question-related effects is something that we'll be looking at quickly. So the way that we formulate a question might affect the answers. And different formulations lead to different types of answers, which is not something we ideally would want when we measure a concept. Answer options might, the way we provide answer options might influence responses, which we need to be aware of. The context in which a question stands within the questionnaire might affect answers. Effect of the data collection situation, I won't talk about much today, but that's something you know. We already talked about face-to-face at the kitchen table, might be different than online in the bus, and things like that. But there's interview effects. Again, face-to-face and telephone only, but it does matter who the person is you talk to and how that person behaves. The interviewer behaves for your own responses. If there's respondent behavior effects, we'll turn to the end as well. Very quickly, interview is a social situation. You know, either you talk to one on the phone or you talk to them at the kitchen table, but it is a social situation. And we tend to adapt our behavior in social situations. We tend to adapt to the situation, to the possible expectations of the person we talk to, and so on and so forth. We interact with the interviewer as a respondent. So, you know, some things, and again, there's more research on this. Repeat the questions. When you have to repeat a question, you're often asked to repeat a question as an interviewer. Try to repeat it with the same intonation. Try to, anyway, have your intonation very stable throughout the entire interview. I mean, don't sound annoyed at some point or tired or whatever you could be as an interviewer. Try to be constant. Try to hide your own positions, your own preferences. That's very difficult sometimes. When you imagine you ask about party preferences, you're a member of the party and have been campaigning for the party, maybe even, you know, you might not even notice that you pronounce that you have different intonation when you mention that party compared to other parties. That's something to be aware of. Interviewers try to minimize the activity of respondents. You don't want to come into a conversation mode. You don't want to argue or discuss anything with the respondent as an interviewer. You know, sometimes respondents would ask, can you repeat the question? I didn't quite understand that. Then you repeat the question with the same intonation, but don't go into further explanation, elaboration on what it might mean and what it might not mean. Because that would, you know, bias that bit of data. Be honest, morally integrated. So interview training, and if you ever employ your own interviewers, extremely important. So you yourself as an interviewer should be constant throughout an interview, and throughout all the interviews you yourself are doing, but you should also be very similar to all the other interviewers that are being employed. So again, it's about neutrality, and that's something, you know, you do really trainings, you do role plays, you have them do interviews and watch them doing them, and all sorts of things to try to avoid any types of bias, to avoid that personality shows. Don't get into routine. As an interviewer, you might be very excited for the first 3 interviews, and then it's all becoming very boring to do, and that will show in the way you do the interview, which is not really ideal. Control interviewers, have them come in from time to time, and this is hard to do, right? You could do role plays again, you could do the training checks again throughout, you could maybe join them for an interview, but they would also interfere with the situation, so difficult to do really. As the last point, we know that interviewers sometimes fabricate data, and it's very hard to figure that out. So of course, if I'm doing face-to-face interviews, and I know that the next member of my sample lives in a village 50 kilometers away, and it would be taking 2 hours to get there and 2 hours to get back. I've got a pen here, I've got my piece of paper here. We know that happens. But we know very little about how frequently it happens, if it always happens. And there's very little ways to control that.
So we conducted a study for this regarding skills empowerment for rural, for example, with intensity.
Yeah.
And we hired an investigator, we trained them before they went on the field, everything. What we realized is, like, we told them how to number the questionnaire. So from 1 to maybe like 10, the questionnaires are quite well, complete.
Yeah.
But later there is like,
not drop off.
Yeah, it's drop off. And also all of a sudden there is a rise in all the answers. Like, we can figure it out by reading the questionnaire that it's fabricated. And we had to exclude all that.
Yeah.
Though we had kept a margin of 500 samples,
Yeah.
but still we were short of, I think, 200 samples when doing the final analysis. This really happened.
Yeah. Not nice. But it does.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, what you do is you pay them enough. That helps with their work. You don't pay them by completed interview, but by time they spend on collecting interviews. So there's no, if you say per completed interview you get X amount of money, then I really won't drive 4 hours back and forth to get that one interview. But if you just say, at the end I want you to collect 50 interviews, I don't mind how much time that takes. You might increase the chances that they actually get it.
In fact, how to make the research and we have doing for every university there was a project, and what that researcher did was that he developed, he gave a app to the person, and he made sure he spent some money, and he gave smartphones. They have to on it, like the whole data is on the whole day, whether they have gone or not.
So you can look at the GPS coordinates.
Yeah, GPS coordinates.
Yeah. This, of course,
he was the least experimental. He was very much interested in quality control. At the end of the day, data was really good.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good control of what people are doing. It's a bit like, I don't know whether everyone in every context will agree to that, but yeah, that's an interesting direction. Interview effects could be looking good behavior. So the respondent provides answers that he or she thinks that the interviewer likes to hear. So you as an interviewer come with saying from which university you come, people might immediately have in mind, oh, that's a liberal university, I better give answers into that direction. Something, and we'll talk a bit more about that in a little bit, because social desirability factors. What is the most desirable answer, the most normatively correct answer? Interview characteristics, dialect affects answers. There's a lot of research on that. So if I, as a northern German, would do interviews in Bavaria, which is the southern area of Germany, I don't know whether that would work. People would immediately hear, I'm not from the area, I'm a stranger, I sound funny. Then gender can affect answers, especially on gender-sensitive issues. have a woman ask a man about his consumption of pornography, or have a man ask a man about consumption of pornography. You will get very different answers. And then, you should also, you see that there's research on that the more talkative an interviewer becomes, the more biased the answers. Other situational effects, so the sponsorship effect, disclosure of sponsorship questionnaire may influence answers. So there's a nice study about survey about environmental issues, and you see that the answers differ whether people were told that it was administered by Greenpeace or not. And let's look at the example in a second. That doesn't square well with what we talked about yesterday, namely the informed consent form, which should make very clear what the purpose is and who the sponsor of the survey are. But be aware, it could still influence your answers. Presence of others, we quickly talked about that already. So when others are around, when your spouses and children are around, you might give different answers. And I'm not going to repeat the pornography question now, but there might be different contexts. This is in German, and I know that, but I didn't have a good example in English so quickly. So I'll just walk you through this. So this is about characteristics of environmental organizations, environmental protection organizations. In very general, Belgian population, one part of the sample knew that they would have been asked by Greenpeace people, and the other part was allegedly asked by a polling company, by a neutral polling company, right? So being asked about environmental organizations, with the Greenpeace sample, 57% said, yeah, they're great because they make people aware of environmental problems, whereas only 45% said that the sample where this was not the case. It's known, of course, huge effects. So you see sponsorship effects can occur. So that's more about the interview and the situation in which the interview takes place that could affect the answers that you give to your questions. Now there's also question-related effects. As Crosnick nicely writes, the questions are worded or delivered differently to different people. The researchers cannot be certain about whether differences between the answers are due to real differences between the respondents or are due to the differential measurement technique. And that's where all this question wording stuff comes in. And it ranges in terms of detail. So avoid suggestive questions. Do you really think that it's a good idea to? Not a good question. Right? Word choice can matter. Should not be allowed is something else than should be forbidden, and will generate different types of answers. I'm not giving you any hint as to whether this is better or this is better. It very much depends on what you're interested in, maybe. But reflect on the fact that you would get different answers. Complex questions are very, very bad to use. Then, question order matters. So you get halo effects depending on where the question is situated in the questionnaire and what you asked before, maybe. So a question about a political scandal of politician X. Yeah? You have a question about that. Did you hear about this? Blah, blah, blah. And then you subsequently somewhere ask a question about political trust in general. You probably get lower values there. Because you primed people thinking about political scandals. The diffusion effect. So it was only the scandal of politician X, but that's going to spread, or that's going to be applied to politics in general. Or it could lead to higher trust scores of politician Y. He did really badly, but in contrast to him, he looked pretty good actually. So consider these things. When we ask about immigration issues, we often have a hard time to think about what should come first and what should come last. Should you have a question about immigration and crime, for instance, before you ask more general questions, things like that. Question order matters. Primacy and recency effects. Especially for questions where you have a long list of answer options, we very systematically would find that the first few answers and the last few answers are the ones which are more often picked. And that's again providing biased estimates. Online would give you very easy ways to handle that, because many of the programs that we also mentioned would randomly vary the order of the lists. And as soon as you start that, as soon as you randomly, have issue X on top, on bottom, somewhere in the middle, these effects won't occur anymore. But they do occur. Just a quick example again. This is the last one in German, sorry. But again, this is what I had. Maybe I'll move to the next one, which is even easier. So, should it be easier for married couples to get divorced? So, in this version, should it be easier for married couples to get divorced, or should it be more difficult, or should it be the same? Whereas here, should it be easier for married couple to get divorced? Should it be the same, or should it get more difficult? Just change the two last answer options, and what you see is that should be easier, it's fairly stable, the first one, but the two last ones should be more difficult or nothing would change. You see, substantial variation here. 5-6 percentage points, just based on the fact that you switch the answer options. Social desirability effects. Again, tendency of respondents to not disclose the true opinion if they perceive their true opinion to be in contrast to the majority opinion or to social norms and values. Again, the example of consumption of pornography would be a good one here, but also racial attitude measures are very difficult on them, because at least in the countries that I do research, and there are still norms and values that would say that you shouldn't be a racist. That being a racist is not morally accepted in public. So people would be hesitant, even if they were racist or holding racist attitudes, to actually report those in a survey, because they would go against the majority opinion, the social norms of the majority. Some say that it's good in these situations to suggest that everything is okay. You could have a question on pornography saying, it's okay to watch pornography. Many people do so. And how often do you actually? To make people a bit more comfortable, maybe getting a more honest answer. If you look at the Krosnick piece, and I know it's already a bit older, at that point the literature was very much divided on whether that actually works or not. We had quite good experiences when it comes to turnout at elections, which is another one of those issues. So if you ask people, did you go vote at the last general election, many people would say yes, although they didn't, because it's societally something you should do, right? It's a norm. You should, as a good citizen, you should go and take part in elections. So we usually get a huge over-reporting of turnout in surveys compared to the actual turnout rates. So you would use questions like, some people go and vote. Many people don't go for vote for good reasons. You might have not time or whatever. Did you actually go out and vote? It's these types of formulations which sometimes help to get better answers overall. And there's a couple of interesting studies also published on these things. So my sense is that for some things actually might work to make people feel more comfortable. There's a big tendency of people to give opinions about stuff that they don't know about, that they don't know anything about. There's this nice, again, German example that asked about opinions towards a constitutional law which doesn't exist. But still, a lot of people would have very strong opinions about the constitutional law. To what degree can we avoid them? Is these also control questions? Control the time, I'm moving on. Answer options. Types of scales used can affect your answers. So it does matter whether you're asking a 5-point scale question with answer options labeled 1 to 5 versus -2 to 2. There's a tendency in these, I think, to get higher estimates than in this. It doesn't matter whether you say agree or not agree with a statement, or agree versus oppose a statement. Some say it's important to label all the points on a scale, so it's not agree at all, agree, agree a little, neither agree nor disagree, disagree, disagree a bit, disagree a lot, very much disagree. And not just say agree, disagree, 1 to 10. Should increase the quality of your answers, but not always done. Number of categories matters, 3-point, 5-point, 7-point, 8, 10-point scales. What do you use? Bigger scales create more variation, 7-point scales seem to be more reliable than 5-point scales. That's very quickly what I would get from the literature. But again, balanced, unbalanced scales. These would give the respondent a midpoint, the neutral, the undecided, the neither this nor that. This one wouldn't give a midpoint. This one would force the respondent to say, I'm either a bit more on that side or a bit more on that side. Is that something you want? Sometimes some respondents get really frustrated if they can't give a neutral answer, the midpoint answer. So we tend to give unbalanced scales. Rating versus ranking matters. Read Krosnick for that again. He's got a nice 2 pages on that. Don't know option matters, but maybe less so than we all think it would. Do you give a don't know option? Do you allow people to say, I don't know. I don't know what my opinion is. I can't make a judgment here. Or don't you do that? For data completeness, we often say don't include the don't know option. Because everyone who says don't know on an item is a missing case. It's someone you can't use in your analysis. And you spend a lot of money on getting data from that person, so ideally you want to be able to use him or her. Very pragmatic reason. And if indeed, look at the literature that Krosnick cites, don't know option, yes or no, doesn't play that much of a role, maybe then we can follow that pragmatic approach. Sometimes, there's sometimes issues where people would have a hard time, some people would have a hard time giving a judgment, and then you need to give don't know option. Measurement scales, we did this on the first day, so I'm not spending time on this. Recommendations for question formulation, simple language, no jargon, no complicated words. Questions must be easy to answer for all. This is not a good question. What percentage of your monthly net income do you spend on rent? Oh, yeah. These are questions you get in surveys, but this is not an easy question. What would you do in this case? Split it up in 2, right? So how much do you monthly net income, how much do you pay for rent, and then you can do the percentage yourself. Avoid using words with multiple meanings, should be fairly clear. Don't use double negations. Don't you think it's not good that something about something? I'm not sure how that works in your languages, but not good. No one understands it. Don't cover more than one aspect in a single question. Don't use double-barreled question. Example. On the whole, I'm satisfied with myself and I take a positive attitude towards myself. That's not one question, that's 2 questions, right? But I'm answering so many surveys when this happens. It's amazing. So be aware of it. Further recommendations. Short, concrete questions. So this seems shorter, but it's not very concrete. Do you watch TV a lot? What's a lot? I don't know. When? What do you mean? How many hours per day do you watch TV on an average weekday? That's more precise, right? It's much easier for me to answer also. And thus, the data will be more reliable. Don't use suggestive questions again. We all know that brushing our teeth regularly is very important. Now tell me, how do you actually brush your teeth? Yeah? Okay, balance in multiple item measures. So if you've got multiple items to measure one construct, in this case immigration attitudes, make sure that you have items that go into both directions. So in this case it would be just immigrants are a burden on the welfare state and immigrants are good for the economy. It would be not good to say immigrants for the economy here because then it would be unbalanced. You'd have two statements going in the same direction. With two that might be fine, but it's not much nicer for item batteries to balance them out. Make sure all possible answer options are provided and that these answer options are mutually exclusive. Don't forget any answer options and make sure you can respondents can actually make a judgment. Sorry, small again. Make answer options explicit. How often do you go to the cinema last month? Often, very often, never. What's often, what's very often? What's, all 1 to 3, 4, more than 5 times. Much easier for me to answer, right? If you think about yourself, how often did you go to the cinema last month? You can probably do that. When asking sensitive questions, again, that's what we just talked about, things like shared opinion, not all that bad. Sometimes you have to take a respondent by surprise. Not even have him or her reflect about social norms and social desirability, but just ask the question.